China's top economist was disappeared. That means there's something really serious going down with China's economy. Seriously, this is grim. Just like we saw with the military purges, when these purges happen and these disappearances happen, it's a small window into the North Korea level of a mystery police state that is China. And let me tell you, things are bad. You know when government finance buildings get set on fire that things are probably not going well in the economic department. But the problem is judging how bad. I mean, even if you don't care about China, it definitely has a massive effect on the world's economy. Therefore, understanding what's going on there is actually incredibly important. A lot of your stuff comes from China, so when there's trouble in the world's second largest economy, it's gonna have a knock-on effect around the world. The problem is, China doesn't want you to know what's going on. That's how dictatorships work. They have to control the narrative. They have to control the figures. They have to control the public opinion. And therefore, they get to decide how they're going to attract foreign investment and do things that will help repair their economy. But what if I told you that there are actually plenty of secret indicators that could tell us exactly how badly China's doing? The first secret window into how badly China's economy is failing, let's just look at groceries. This video from this guy really tells it all.
上海市最低小时工资24元的购买力究竟有多强？今天我们来到一家大型平价连锁超市，一黄椒13块8毛，口冰糖小苹果12块9，10块钱一斤，我的妈呀，7块钱一斤，这是最便宜的。 8块9元一盒，我的妈呀！冻翅中22块8一斤，这油都不便宜，最便宜的一瓶是15块钱。1小时工资24元，加入购物袋费用后，总计消费23块7毛9。咱买了这么多东西，根本花不完，购买力真强，社会发展真好。
China's minimum wage is about $2.40 per hour, but that's if you're lucky. Outside of any major city, hundreds of millions of people actually earn much less than that. Either way, if you go to Shanghai, like this dude, China's richest, most prosperous, most attractive, and most international city, the minimum wage is $3.41 per hour. Anyway, this dude went to go see how much food he could buy for 1 hour of wages. And in the end, he was barely able to afford anything. Really, he ended up with 1, maybe 2 meals out of this. Now, people keep going on about how China's catching up with the USA and how cheap it is to live there. And let me tell you from experience, it is not cheap, especially not now. Just to prove this to you, you know, with everyone rightfully talking about inflation and just how expensive the USA is getting, let me show you what I can get if I went to New York City, one of the most sophisticated, expensive, and international cities in the USA, basically the US equivalent of Shanghai, for 1 hour of minimum wage work. Okay, for comparison, in China's best place, 1 hour of minimum wage got this guy 4 small bananas, 1 small bunch of Shanghai cabbage, 2 eggs, a tiny bit of rice, not even 1 bowl's worth, 1 bunch of noodles, a small bag of milk, a tiny bit of minced pork, and a little vinegar. So with 1 hour of minimum wage in New York City, I was able to get 5 bananas, 2.7 pounds of chicken breast, 8 ounces of fresh leaf spinach, 1 20-ounce loaf of white bread, that's over a pound, a half a gallon of 2% milk, 1 pound of rotini pasta, and 12 large eggs. I basically got 5 or 6 times the food of this guy compared to his 1 or 2 meals with the minimum wage earned in New York City versus Shanghai. Don't even get me started on property prices, because you might be tempted to think or say that China is cheaper than the US in terms of housing prices, and that's where you would be very, very wrong. China is poor, and stuff is expensive. It is not even comparable to life in the USA. Here's another secret window that shows China's economy is doing badly. China doesn't want luxury goods anymore. They're buying fake stuff. Luxury items like Gucci, LV, Dior, these brands you would always see in China, especially with the ultra-rich flocking to buy them. But that's just not happening anymore. That's another secret indicator of major economic downturn. People don't have disposable income to buy these items. And there's a new trend that is fired up. Knockoffs or dupes. Who needs Lacoste when you have Cartello? Adidas? Nah, Abidas. Dolce & Gabbana? Dosha and Gavanov. You might want to try Birkenstocks, but why not try Birkensticks instead? You might not be able to buy an iPhone now, but you certainly can buy iPhone boots. B-Sauce. Meats by Dr. Dre. Didn't know he was in the butchery business. I also didn't know Playboy was a luxury brand, but in China, you can just get Pearl Boy. People are flocking to buy counterfeit goods like mad right now in China, and it's absolutely insane the scale that it's happening at. The funny thing is that fakes in the past, when I was in China, were reserved for the poor. It was seen as embarrassing. If you had a fake brand on, people would think you're a factory worker or a laborer. Those are the people that bought fake stuff. But now, people are buying fakes, and they aren't poor. They're just people that were buying luxury items before, and it's not that they're poor, it's that the rich people became poor. The obvious economic slowdown has resulted in social media searches for dupes or fake goods tripling from 2022 to 2024, said Laurel Gu, a Shanghai-based director of Mintel, a market research firm. Gu said that unlike 10 years ago, when Chinese shoppers, the world's top luxury spenders, were clamoring for Western goods from famous brands, consumers are now increasingly turning to more affordable alternatives, a trend that is becoming the new mainstream. Dupes can be considerably cheaper than their branded rivals. For example, this video is brought to you by Incogni. Let's say you subscribe for a free newsletter and shortly after you started receiving lots of spam from unknown senders. Maybe you searched for some information about a medical case and you started seeing ads and promotions about it from services you never visited. Welcome to the gross world of data brokers. Thousands of companies are collecting, aggregating, and trading your personal data without you knowing anything about it. And you have the right to request data brokers to delete what information they have about you and protect your privacy. The bad news is it would take you years to do it manually. Incogni can do the messy work for you automatically. Incogni helps you protect your privacy and take your personal data off the market by reaching out to data brokers on your behalf, requesting your personal data removal, and dealing with their objections. Data brokers like to get your name, your email, your home address, your gender, your phone number, your education, your IP information, your relatives, alias, social security number, employment history, shopping habits, but you should let Incogni work for you. Take your personal data back with Incogni. Go to incogni.com/cmilk and use the code CMILK to get 60% off an annual Incogni plan. Take your personal data off the market today. A pair of Lululemon's Align yoga pants costs about 750 yuan, which is $106 on its official Chinese website. But by contrast, a search of popular e-commerce sites like Tmall yields dozens of other options, often using Lulu in their store names, touting similar leggings for as little as $5, claiming to be of comparable quality. Here's another secret window. You can't hide satellite imagery of lights on factories. In fact, there was an excellent study by Luis Martinez. By looking at actual satellite data and lights emitted from countries with streetlights and factories and things like that, he found that countries that are not free, for example, like China, over-report their economic data, while democratic countries like the USA report lower growth, in fact, just being more honest, because of checks and balances and inherent systems in place that make these countries inherently more transparent.
Satellite images measuring the intensity of electric lights at night are a close proxy for economic activity. A common example is the nighttime view of the Korean peninsula. South Korea is lit up brightly. Just above the capital Seoul lies the border with North Korea, which is mostly black. Martinez's model suggests Beijing may have overstated GDP growth by a third over the past 2 decades, making its economy far smaller than claimed. China denies manipulating economic figures.
I love that freedom directly correlates with reported GDP figures with every single country I looked at. It's an easy litmus test when trying to figure out the economic situation of a country. Is it a free country? Well, it's probably telling the truth. Is it an authoritarian country? It's probably lying. The Chinese government won't tell you the actual economic figures. They'll just pump out billions of dollars of propaganda to tell you to invest in China and that it's never been a better time. Meanwhile, Chinese people across the country take pay cuts and people cannot afford to buy things that they once could afford before. This is especially dangerous for China's economy because they need foreign investment in the worst possible way at a time when no one wants to do business with China. You can try and fudge domestic figures, but when things like pork indexes, telling you how much pork is being sold, those things will slip through and show you that people actually don't have money to spend. Traditionally in China, when people don't have money, they don't buy pork. You can't hide things like house prices. Prices of existing homes are down nearly 30% from 2021. Unlike the huge positive wealth effect seen in the US post-COVID, Chinese households have suffered a massive loss of wealth from the housing slump, amounting to an estimated $18 trillion in loss, said Barclays economists. To put that in perspective, they said it's as if each three-person household in China lost around $60,000, an amount that is almost 5 times China's per capita GDP. Basically, to put it in layman's terms, the average three-person household just lost 5 years of income in China. You can imagine how damaging that is, not just for the middle class, but especially the very poor, which again is hundreds of millions of people in China. Protests are breaking out across the entire country at an unprecedented rate. And again, in a country where you can't protest because houses that were bought by these people were never finished. As well as protests at banks and government buildings about money being lost to corrupt government officials who embezzled the funds. These things are happening, and it's pretty wild in China right now. So it's interesting. You see nothing but flowers and rainbows from the Chinese government state media. These little secret windows into reality paint a very different picture. When you see a directed push at showing people walking around China shopping and how much money they have, look at the economy and how it's flourishing, I actually think that's the easiest window to peer through. When dictatorships tell you that everything's okay, it's most often time not. Again, all sources are below in the description if you want to read more into this stuff. It's a fascinating topic. If you want to see more, you're probably going to want to go check out The China Show. It's my podcast that I do with my friend Serpent ZA. We talk about everything that happened in China that week. It's an up-to-date news source about everything that's happening in China, the viral, the funny, the serious, everything in between. And it's also available on audio. Go check out Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere where you get your podcasts. Look up The China Show and please click follow. It would help us a lot. Listen to the show or go check it out on YouTube. Thank you very much, and I'll catch you on the next one.